And this is the way that things go. I don't know why, but that's the way they go. I got everything hooked up and pulled the cable for the starter. Nada. No bueno. So I came out, and of course, we've done this a dozen times. Pull this lever by hand, engine starts. We've had this engine started and running a dozen times at least. It made one clunk, and that was it. And the gear here obviously was in against the flywheel. There's a huge gap here, so obviously the engine didn't turn and it didn't fling the gear back out. And now I got nothing. And I've loosened the 3 starter bolts and managed to get the gear back out away from the flywheel. But I got nothing. Pull the lever. I got nothing. I guess it doesn't like that cable connected. I don't know. Now, this has got in a modern car we would call this a starter relay, but apparently there's some kind of a mechanical switch in here that energizes the starter. And I don't know if it's just decided to go haywire or what. But it looks like I'm going to have to pull the damn starter off. Excuse my French, but that ain't fun, because looking at it, I'm not sure the starter will come off without pulling the exhaust off, at least the front pipe there. The Bendix sticks so far out the back that I don't think you can get it out of there. I might be able to. I have to see, drop it down and tilt it out of there. The good news is, if there's any good news, is that I was able to get at all 3 bolts. And of course, the hardest bolt to get at is a different size than the other 2. So there's always that. But I think it's time to quit for today and get a fresh start tomorrow. And here we have one MGTC starter. Got the thing off of there after a lot of twisting and cussing to drop the exhaust pipe, and then I ended up having to take the 3 bolts out that mount the steering box to the frame. This stupid, I won't say it, lever is a royal pain in the bazoo. Sticks up, catches on everything. So we're going to take this thing apart. There's some screws on the back side here that we've got to get out. These little tiny screws. I think there might be another one underneath this cap. Well, I'll pry that off and see. And then see what we got inside here. My suspicion, my hope is that this mechanism in here is toast. But who knows what we're going to find. We'll see in a minute. Well, this is what we got. We have this round disc here that moves in and out and then makes contact with these contactors here, and going to assume that this is over here. Yeah, over here. Let me get something besides my fat finger. So your power is here, and when you push in on that plunger, it transmits the power to this side, which is what makes the starter work. Now this is really depressed in here. I would assume that should be flat, one would think. You never know. What happens when you assume. Over here, there's a very slight ridge, but over here, there's a pretty deep ridge there. So I'm going to assume that this copper plate, brass plate, whatever it is, copper probably, is worn to the point where when you push in on this, it's not making contact. So we'll order up some parts for that. I think we've got a source for those. And I'll also have a good look at this. Certainly needs cleaned up at a minimum. Probably a good idea to look after all of this stuff here, although I'm not sure I want to know how that comes apart. So we'll see what we're going to get here. It's got this little sort of ratchet mechanism here so that this part here can be rotated around wherever you want. And quite honestly, let's see, I think it's moving. Don't know if it's moving enough. Seems kind of suspicious. We'll have a think about that. So while we're waiting on parts, we went ahead and pulled these bits off the back of the starter. Got 4 fasteners that hold them in place, and this one over here has 2 screws, and this one over here has a screw and a nut, and this one is where the power feed goes. But I think you'll find when we get these new ones that is flush. That recess is not there when it's new. And you can see on this other one, it's almost used up, just about worn down to nothing. So that is no bueno. So I'm hopeful that will cure our starter problem. We went ahead and ordered the new lever assembly, and actually I think what they're going to give us is a rebuilt one. We'll see. Probably could have got the bits and rebuilt it ourselves, but you know, what the heck, we'll have a spare maybe, and that's this piece here. That round disc goes down on there and makes contact, and that's what makes your starter work. I suppose it's okay when it works. When it doesn't work, it ain't no fun. Okay, finally got our parts order. Took forever, but we got some new contact plates and a new starter switch. I suppose you'd call this a switch. There we have the old one. We also ordered a new set of screws just for just because. Hopefully I'm going to try to put the starter on without the starter switch, and hopefully having the new screws will make it easier to put the starter switch on afterwards. We'll find out, that's for sure. Might be prohibitive, but we'll see. Here you can certainly see the difference between the new bits and the old bits. This one in particular, you can kind of see how thick that is. Probably an 1/8 of an inch. I don't know what that is. 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters, something like that. We could measure it, I guess, if we were so inclined, but you can see just how thin that old one is. Almost nothing left. Hopefully. Well, I thought I made a mistake once, but I didn't. So it looks like, however, I ordered the wrong thing. I ordered 3 little screws to hold the starter switch onto the starter, and I got 3 little screws that didn't fit. But guess what? I have 3 screws that fit in there, and I guess that's okay because I didn't have that screw before, but now I've got 2 extras. So there's a lesson learned. Make sure you know what you're ordering when you order. But at least I've got a proper screw now for that cable, and I don't have to use a bit of carburetor linkage to get the job done. So with a lot of screaming and yelling and kicking and cussing, we got this whole thing put back together. What a pain. Had to move the steering box, take the 3 mounting bolts out, move that, drop the exhaust. Of course, that exhaust was a lot easier to connect when I just had the front pipe on there. And now that I got the whole damn thing hooked together, it's a little more awkward. But, yeah, we fixed one thing and now we got another thing. We went ahead and bought a new cable. And it's a good thing that we did, because this is, if I can get this turned around the right way, the old starter switch. Now you can see how vertical that lever is compared to that one. That one's laid back at about a 45-degree angle compared to this one. So the cable we had was way too short. So good thing we ordered a new cable. And so we took one of those screws that we bought the wrong thing, and it held the cable in place, so that was good. But I gotta tell you, when I pull on that cable, and what we did, we cheated, because it's a royal pain in the wazoo to run these cables up around that throttle linkage. So fortunately, the new cable fit in the old housing, and we just fed the new cable in there. But now, because we're clamped back here, and I might add that we're not clamped tight enough because that'll move, we have all of this, can't hardly see it, we have all of this flexibility in the cable. And when I pull on the cable, I got to pull the damn thing about 12 inches to get this to move to engage the starter. And I can engage the starter manually. It's not that complicated. So now we're going to have to re-engineer how this cable is mounted. I have seen some cars that have a bracket here, and I may even have that bracket somewhere that mount the starter cable to it. It's a more rigid affair. This isn't very rigid here. The enrichment cable works fine, but this cable here is not clamped tight enough on the back side, and of course the housing wants to slide in there, and when that happens, you lose cable travel. So, you know, we fix one thing and we gotta fix another thing. It just never ends. So that's the frustration for the day. I probably would have been further ahead, since this really wasn't bad, didn't look bad. Probably would have been further ahead just to leave that in there. So tried to do myself a favor and put a new starter switch in, and all I did was create more work. But that's the way it goes. I'm going to have to just put some thought into that. I mean, I suppose the ideal thing would be to make something clamped on the steering column, and then went up and grabbed the hold of this cable and held it right there, so that you really are getting the most out of it. This is really a long way to clamp the housing way back here. It's too much flex in that cable, and that just increases the amount of pull you got to go there. You really don't have to move this very far, to be honest with you. I mean, it just, you know, let's see, moved the wrong one. Just that's, you know, that's about it. But right now, I can't do it with the cable. Well, okay. Work. I did dig around and found this plate. Still has old Moss Motors tag on it. I have to touch it up a little bit. It's just a little nicked up, but we can touch that up. But I put the starter cable to that, and it's good and sturdy and solid. And I found in my stash of stuff a little cable clamp, a nice aluminum one that grabs the hold of that cable, and it ain't going anywhere. So now we have the fuel mixture cable down here by itself on the wobble arm, and the starter cable on the solid arm, and I'm hoping it'll work. But we had to take this off and that off and screws out of there, and you know, same old story. Take 12 things apart to do one thing. But I think we got it to work. We'll see if we can pull on that cable. I think I got to pull on it with both hands. And there you go. It is a hard pull, but I think it'll work. Don't know why it's a hard pull. I've read a lot of different stories about them being a hard pull. You know, I think part of it is this arm down here being tilted so far back. I'm not sure, but you know, it's just, I'm not sure if it was mounted straight up and down and it was here that it would be any different. I don't know if it's really sort of pulling over center, but I certainly don't like the idea that that arm is that farther back, but too late to fix it now.